Our visitors are probably like, what? This is a weird church. Usually we do that stuff after the sermon, but kiddos got to learn something from our Polly and Lily. Please join me in prayer. God, I ask that the meditations of our minds and the words of my lips would be holy and acceptable to you this day, and might be for us a word, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Okay, if you recall, now like 25 minutes ago, we read this story from Luke. And in this story, a lot of remarkable things happen. And I promise I will keep my remarks very short, Sluggo, so that you can get to your game. But I want to look at what is happening in that text, because it's one that a lot of us learned from VeggieTales. Anybody have VeggieTales growing up? Yeah, okay. Some of us learned it from felt boards. Anybody have felt boards growing up in Sunday school? Yeah. Those still freak me out. And some of you, I don't know, you were born before the invention of color TV, so I don't know what you had. But Faye actually asked me the other day, she asked me if before colored TV, she learned about that somewhere, she said, could people see in color? I was like, I don't know what you learn on the internet. But this is a story we've all heard, right? Or those of us who've been in the church a while have all heard it. It's a story where Jesus is standing beside a lake. And there are so many dang people who want to hear what he has to say. Think about this. There are so many people trying to hear what he has to say, and he does not have the privilege and the horror of modern microphones. That he steps into a boat that is not his. Notice the boat is empty, and that guy just gets right into it like he owns the place. I find that wild. So Jesus steps into a boat that is not his and says to the person who's busy washing their nets, hey, can you put me out a little ways so that I have some room? So he gets in the boat, and Simon puts him out in a little ways, and he does his preaching. Okay, so many people want to hear this itinerant preacher that he has to get in a boat and be pushed back from shore just so he can have some space. And then after he's done preaching, he says to Simon, put out into the deep water and let your nets down for a catch. How many of you have ever been fishing? Okay, a decent number for the middle of the country. I grew up fishing all the time, and there's this thing that happens with fishermen, especially old fishermen, who will be like, oh, what are you using? What bait are they biting off of, right? But now we've got, nobody asked for Jesus' opinion. Nobody. And we've got this guy who is not a fisherman. What is Jesus? A carpenter turned itinerant preacher. What the hell does he know about fishing? But he says, put out your little ways and put down your nets. And Simon, I can only imagine, was exasperated and said, Master, we've worked all night long and not caught anything. And he's already cleaned his nets. Jesus is asking him to now re-dirty his nets. But if you say so, I will let down the nets. When they'd done this, they caught so many fish that their nets are beginning to burst. He has to call for backup, and the boats begin to swamp. That is a lot of fish indeed. And then we have this moment with Peter, Simon Peter. He sees how many fish there are, and he kneels, falls down at Jesus' knees and says, go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. For he and all who were with him were astounded at the catch of fish that they had taken. And then at the end of this scene, Jesus, who's nearly swamped their boats, which he half stole and then was telling them what to do with, says, do not be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching people. When they heard that, they brought their boats to ashore, left everything, and followed him. That is a remarkable story. A story of an epiphany for these people. It's remarkable in about 10 different ways. I think we could preach this text from now till Easter and probably find something new each week when we looked at it. But for today, I want to talk very briefly about what I find most remarkable about this text. What is most remarkable to me about this story is not that there were so many people following Jesus that he had to stand in a boat offshore to get a little space. We see that with celebrity culture. I mean, I know about the Chiefs because I know about Taylor Swift. Imagine if she came to town. She too might need a boat to back up a ways. Jesus has some celebrity in the ancient world. So while that is remarkable, and I wish that modern Presbyterian preachers could have a little of that influence, it is not the most remarkable thing to me. It is remarkable that he has the audacity to tell fishermen how to go fishing, and that he has some sixth sense about it when he's not a fisherman at all. But that's not what's most remarkable. What is most remarkable to me is not that they caught so many fish that the boats began to swamp. But what is most remarkable to me is whom he called to be disciples. Jesus is being followed by crowds who are so eager to know what he has to say that they are literally running him off the shore. These are people who are hungry for what he has to say. They've already left whatever they were doing and have followed to hear him. But these are not the people that he calls to build his church. Think about that. He doesn't call the people who are already interested in going. I think about what modern corollaries might be, right? The people who've been going to church forever, who are listening and retweeting or reposting what their preacher says. It's not the ones who are tuning in every day to the 700 Club or whatever the televangelist preacher is saying. It's these other dudes who are busy doing their own thing that he calls to be his disciples. What is remarkable to me is that he calls people who are already busy doing their own thing. He calls people from the background, from the sidelines, to come and be his disciples. When Jesus swamps the boat with all these fish, Peter cries out that they are not worthy. It is not the zealous followers of him who already are trying to do all the right things. It's the guys who are worried that they're not worthy to be near this guy, whom he calls out of their ordinary work and their ordinary lives to follow him, and whom he equips to build his church. I want you to look around for a moment. This building is insane. I don't know if we all agree on that. But this building is insane, right? There are buildings like this all over the world that are insane. The fact that this one dude who had something to say called 12 guys from their very ordinary lives, and they built a church that would last for 2,000 and some odd years, and that we would be sitting here today in a building that looks like this, remembering stories about this guy, is insane. And yet, the people he called to do that work were very normal people. Fishermen cleaning out their dang nets, wanting to go home because they've already fished all night. I wonder how many of you have had a call story like this. Or maybe you're living in one right now. How many of you have just been minding your own business and felt some call to come and serve Jesus the Christ? How many of you just are doing your own thing in your little boat and then feel like you've been pulled into or called out to serve a greater purpose? I wonder if the reason I like this part of the story so much is because I feel like I was a person in those boats. And maybe you do too. When I decided to study religion in college, and then when I went to seminary shortly thereafter, I was absolutely, positively sure of one thing. And that thing was that I would never be a pastor. Right? That was not for me. I swear too much. I drink too much. I like to stay out late and fish. I was not going to be a pastor. And yet, here we are on the one day of a week I don't wear a collar. How many of you are sitting in some place or feel like you might be being called to something you said, I'm not doing that. How many of you, like Simon Peter, think, I am not worthy of the attention or service of God? And yet, you are who he calls. You and me, normal people with normal lives who just want to wash our dang nets and go to bed. Let's take the net out, I guess, if I have to. Sometimes our lives are overturned so immensely that our boats are nearly swamped and we realize, all right, yeah, I'm going with you. I believe we may be living in a moment historically when we are being called out of the sidelines, called out of our ordinary lives, especially those of us who prefer to kind of be quiet, sideline, respectable Christians. We are being called by the one who swamps the boats to follow him and to share his message of love and grace and justice and compassion. So today's text is an invitation to you. It's time to get out of the boat. We have to leave behind who we wanted to be or who we thought we would be and follow him. Amen.